Welcome, everyone, to League One Fun, brought to you by Roughneck Scarves and Golden Goal Press. We are here to talk about the week that was in USL League One and look ahead to the week that is forthcoming. We are joined today by our regular cast of characters. First up, we got Ira. Ira?
Hey, so I was actually on TV today talking about the Federal Reserve announcement, and they spoiled the Barcelona-Liverpool match for me while I was on air. I was like, "What are you doing? I'm going to go home and watch this thing before I, podcast tonight." And they completely ruined it for me. It was terrible.
Before we move on from Ira, can we just talk about these suspenders?
Yeah, you like them? They're pretty good, right?
I'll send you my office address. I want a pair of those.
I can send you my tailor.
For those listening to the podcast later, Ira has on suspenders with soccer balls up and down them, just like the dad that he is. Next up on the show today, Jason is with us once again. Jason, what's up?
What's going on? I was not on TV today. I'm not as important as Ira, but since the Union are down to a third keeper as of a couple minutes ago, I figured I throw the bad boy on and give Curtin a chance to call me up. I think I still got a game or two left in the tank just in case.
And then I am Chris here with you again from Greenville, but we are joined by a fourth member of the panel today, a special guest jumping on with us here at the front end, Stephen Short, the Senior Vice President for USL League One. Stephen, thanks for jumping on with us.
Great to be back. I need to be a regular member of this team. Let's make that happen.
Yeah, let's do it.
Avengers Unite. Let's go.
We'll all wear matching suspenders.
That sounds dangerous.
So before we jump into looking back at the week and looking ahead, while we've got Stephen on the line, we're just going to jump in and have a little conversation with you because today was a big day for the league. USL League One announcing a new team in Omaha, as I like to call it, Omaha-Hallelujah. It was a big day for Nebraska. And if you were listening last week to USL League One Fun podcast, we talked to Peter Wilt, and he said, hey, I think Omaha might be a great place for a team to drop in, and maybe a little foreshadowing, maybe just a little foresight, who knows. So we're going to just kind of go around the horn and maybe just jump in and ask you some questions, Stephen, and let you kind of elaborate a little bit. When did this process start in terms of Omaha in particular, and how long did it take you from day one until the announcement today?
7,000 days. No, it really started about a little bit over 2 years ago. Really, it's not something that's ever overnight. We spent a lot of time trying to make sure it's with the right ownership group and the right stadium and really the right market. And we knew years ago Omaha had a tremendous upside and opportunity with its growth, with the corporate market and with their love of sports. And one day we'll make it to the College World Series. Maybe if anybody wants to send me tickets, let's do it. But, we knew Omaha would be great. So when we found the right group, it was the right time. And, man, what a great day, and we're excited for it.
Yeah, and this is a town that has 3,000 people come to their junior hockey nights. And so obviously dying for sports. Was there anything in particular though about the city that drew you to it? And, how did you get with the group and Gary and everyone that was involved? How did that process work out?
Well, the city itself, I think, speaks for itself. It is a sports destination, not only for NCAA and minor league baseball, but you can also look at the Olympic trials that have been here, and they're always pursuing new events. So we knew there was a massive sports culture here. The youth scene here is just booming. And so you were starting to see, amateur games pop up. And so it was really bubbling to the professional ranks, if you want to look at it that way. With Gary Green, his team, and, we'd known them for several years. And I think what makes them enticing is you look at people that individually have been very successful in their own companies. And so they know how to operate a business. And they've been successful in also operating professional sports businesses, whether it's a team or an ancillary business like Baseball America. So when you look at that, there's a lot of knowledge there, at least in sports. And, they've added some soccer specialty people to their team already. So it really is everything coming together at the perfect time. I wouldn't say lightning in a bottle because it hasn't been overnight, but it's exciting that it all came to today.
So, Steve, how does that process start? Do you approach teams or potential owners, or do they contact you? I'm sure there's a mix at some level, but in this particular case, did Gary and his team contact you and say, "Hey, we might be interested in this. Can we talk more about it?" Or was this something that the league actively was pursuing for a while?
I believe it was one that the league was actively pursuing. It certainly is different in every market. Like I said earlier, we identified Omaha as a potential market early on, one of interest and one of growth. But like in other markets, there are times where we may have had contact with a certain individual that put us in touch with a different individual that continues to tie all the dots together, if you would. And so when we met Gary, we knew he was going to be the right guy, and he wanted some local individuals as well that knew the soccer industry. That his background isn't specifically in that, but it is in sports, and he's going to change that, which is exciting for us. Where I think he's going to be an exciting owner for the league. But as those conversations, mature over several years, and sometimes it's they go down different paths, and they'll come back and move in a different direction. But no, I think if you look at every market, it's different. But the great thing is the result's the same, and so it is about the journey, but more so the destination.
So we know Gary has the connection there to the baseball team, and as part of the announcement, the team's going to be playing there at the baseball stadium, at least for next year. Is that a permanent spot, or is there a conversation about potentially building kind of more of a soccer-specific stadium in Omaha in the future?
As far as I know, it's a permanent spot. I mean, they've worked a lot to make changes to the stadium, but what it's going to take to host professional soccer in Omaha, and specifically in Sarpy County, where the stadium's located. So when you look at it, there's some things they're going to have to do, some modifications that allow us to get the right pitch width, that would add potentially a new locker room and some new amenities to the stadium, some administrative areas as well for the front office. So they're all in, and it's going to be exciting. I can't wait to come back to the home opener and see these additions. And I mean, I'll get to see pictures in the meantime where they're working on it, but they're all in and doing it right. And they want to make sure it's done right. It's authentic. They want it to be loud. They already told us they want the smoke there, and we're already sending them, like, here's the type of smoke we can use. So for us, there's no doubt when you come to a game here, you can already visualize the drums, the smoke, the flags, the fans outside tailgating, and just really creating a place where other teams will not want to come play, because this crowd was already loud, even in the room for the announcement today. So if the stadium's a little bit more than that, it's going to be a fun place to watch a match.
And you spoke about with the residents there and how it is a sports town, and there was amateur teams, being built. Was there any conversation when you went in there to possibly collaborating with these amateur teams? Were there any initial conversations with them, or was this a straight, we're going to be, this Omaha USL dedicated team with no kind of affiliation in an independent team?
And I think it's a great question, because I think a lot of people think when we launch an expansion team that we just come in and drop it. And it never works that way. There's always conversations that are had at all levels of the game, whether it's collegiate, amateur, youth, to understand the landscape, understand if this could work. And, we had conversations with the amateur teams here that are in town. Matter of fact, even our conversation several years back saying that we see Omaha as a pro market. And they understood that. They're on board with that. And I've actually gotten some congratulatory texts today from them. They also had some representatives at the event. So I think what we're seeing is, yes, there's a communication that does occur, and everyone's trying to build towards a common goal. There are some fans that maybe have a different opinion on Twitter, but everyone's building towards professional soccer in Omaha.
So talk to us a little bit about how the decisions made between having a League One team or a championship team, firstly, and secondly, maybe this hasn't been decided yet, but is there going to be any potential affiliations that Omaha might have with either an MLS or a championship side, a la Tucson or North Texas and OCB?
Sure. So a lot of the decision between the championship and the League One fall under the U.S. Soccer Pro League standards. As you may or may not know, there are standards on market sizes and certain percentages at the Division II level that the league has to have so many cities and so many of so much population to meet Division II criteria, and Division III that doesn't exist, which is great. So when we launched USL League One, it was all about markets of a specific size, really having access to pro soccer for the first time. So that drove a lot of the League One decision. Also, I think you look at League One, and it's a place to grow. It's a place to create a foundation and make sure that you're building a fan base from day one, and then growing into something bigger if they so choose to do that. Repeat your second question for me again.
Yeah, just if we knew if Omaha was going to have any kind of affiliation with other clubs, like maybe like a Forward Madison and Minnesota, or I mean, obviously it's not directly owned like a Tucson, but if it's a little bit different, if it's going to have a relationship with them, if they've even thought about that yet.
Sure. All my conversations with Coach Sims and the ownership group are about creating something that is specific and representative of Omaha. And I think part of that is creating a roster and a style of play that is Omaha centric. So I wouldn't anticipate that, but I mean, that's their decision. But it really seems that they want to make sure that this team and this club represents this region, and this region specifically.
So for those of us who don't know, can you tell us a little bit about, give us some background on Coach Jay Mims and why he's the man for the job there?
In all of our conversations, it seems like everything was pointing to Coach. And he's an Omaha product, helped raise and even to national prominence the UNO program. Spent time at Creighton, has professional coaching experience with Real Salt Lake. So when you look at his pedigree, he's coming home. And he's coming home to have a dream job at a professional soccer team. So I think when you look and you find out who's been connected into this community, who has ties to it, who understands what it takes to develop something from the ground up, this is your guy. And the ownership is 100% behind him, and I'm excited to see what he puts on the field.
In the press release, probably one of my favorite parts that I was reading, you were talking about the branding, and something that's made Ford and other teams in the league such a success is it's very much fan-oriented branding. It's fan-driven, community-driven, and it sounds like that's something that's going to be happening in Omaha as well, right? Can you kind of talk about the importance of the fan engagement and how they're probably going to be the ones to brand and name the team?
I think it really is just a process of listening for the ownership group and the leadership here, and meeting with the community. Again, like I said earlier, they wanted to represent this community of Omaha and Sarpy County and the greater metro area. So they want to hear what the fans want. They just don't want to go and create something and force it on someone. It definitely isn't their approach. And like you've probably heard me talk about before, it's one of the biggest decisions a club can make early on. This is something that will impact everything you do for years to come. So they want to get it right. They want to make sure that it represents this community, those that are coming to the matches, and those that will ultimately come to the matches, and the city as well. So there's going to be a lot of listening, a lot of engagement. I believe there are some, as they work through this process, which they've initiated, there are going to be some focus groups with some fans to start finding out what they love about Omaha and the region. Fans can even go to the website, I believe, and start filling out forms, or soon can, to hear what they would like to see it represent. So I think you're going to see nearly a crowdsourced branding effort, which is, I think, unbelievable. And we'll start to see more teams follow that pattern, I believe.
When we talk about expansion of the league and additional announcements that we might get, I guess, what does it? Is the league planning on announcing, expansion teams now, and then maybe any League Two teams that are moving up in September after their season ends, and obviously, if any championship teams are moving down, those announcements would be made later. Is that kind of the rollout plan as we move forward throughout the year?
Our plan is when they're ready to announce them, but I wouldn't anticipate. I believe what you're alluding to, any movement. We'll be announcing League One teams. And we're excited for when those occur. Obviously, you guys are on our list to make sure you know about it a little earlier than everybody else. But for us, we're focused on League One. And if someone wants to join the league at a later date, they're welcome to, as long as they meet the standards. But like everything else, there's a process that everyone has to go through. And so as of right now, I'd anticipate League One expansion announcements only.
So you're, with the Omaha announcement, you're obviously putting a focus on the Midwest out there. Is this, I know Tucson's probably begging for some teams out on the West Coast, but is the Midwest now lumped into there in terms of markets that you're looking towards?
Without a doubt, and Tucson should know we're also focusing out west. But the Midwest has been an area of focus for us. And earlier in the year, I spent a week traveling from, Rockford, Illinois, Peoria, even spent some time in Normal, Illinois, to Cedar Rapids and Davenport, Iowa. And as we focus on the Midwest, and really you get to make some really good friends on your trips and visit these cities. And really right now, my heart goes out to the Davenport community and what they're dealing with this flooding. So as much as we'd like to see pro soccer there, we want to make sure people are safe. And we're growing those communities, and maybe soccer becomes something that helps rebuild if something gets there. But for us, it's the Midwest. There are certain areas, gaps we need to fill. And yes, it's not just Tucson. Other teams want teams closer to them as well. It goes back to our rivalries. So we're focused on the entire country, but there certainly are regions that we're a little more active in at this point than others.
I'd put a question out on Twitter, and probably the most common responses I was getting and questions I was getting was for people who want a USL League One team in their city. What's the thing that they need to do to get that consideration? So is it something like where you have teams like the Philadelphia Union who kind of started their own supporters group and showed the ability to be able to have fans and find a stadium site? Is there anything specifically that people can do that are begging for a pro team in their city?
Other than my man in Evansville that tweets me that he wants a team in Evansville, Indiana every week. No, that's exactly what we love to see. It's a desire for the pro game or a desire for that next level. And that's something that we try to analyze and experience when we're in each market. Sometimes we have a better opportunity than others, or we're able to connect with the right individuals. Matter of fact, I got a tweet today after the announcement of Omaha, let's get a team in Greensboro, North Carolina. And my response was, let's do it. What do we have to do to make it happen? And so for us, it's just being open, saying we want the game here. And a lot of times it could be like the Sons of Ben that drove that growth. It could be like the Coopers in Louisville that drove a lot of the Louisville growth. And so we'd love to see that these groups are coming together and saying we want pro soccer. And the more we hear that, the easier it makes it.
All right. I appreciate it, Stephen. And before I let you go, I'm going to just, we have Omaha being announced. We've got Rochester in 2020 and Penn in 2020. So that's 3, but don't we kind of need to make it balanced if we're going to have the schedule to avoid someone having to buy? So can we something else this year?
Happen. We want to work on that, right? We want to make sure it's the right time. We have 2 teams that are still working on stadiums, 3 other teams currently in the league that are going to build. So we have a lot of off-season work to do, in-season work to that. So as we work towards 2020, we're excited for that year. I think it's going to be a great year too. I mean, we're only 5 weeks in right now, so we have a little bit to go. The great thing is we're seeing a very competitive league on the field right now. The point totals are close, goals are close. We're seeing some amazing plays and great athletes. So I'm excited to see the rest of our stories before we completely turn our eye to 2020.
So no hints on maybe when we might hear, the next
0.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll try.
I'll keep you in the loop. Absolutely.
Okay, I can keep a secret, I promise.
Well, that's good. So, it's exciting for us guys, and we always appreciate the conversations. It's fun for us to talk the game, and again, I think that gets back to what League One can be and will be, is very open about our plan, how we will grow and really kind of help grow these communities as well.
Stephen, I'm rocking my Carson Newman sweatshirt for you today. Thanks for jumping in with us on League One Fun this week. Thanks for being open and just answering all the many questions we had. I know that the fans had about the Omaha expansion bid, and you're always welcome to jump on at any time with us.
Well, I tell you, if you want to know more about Omaha, or you can go to the League One website. You can follow it on Twitter at USL Omaha, I believe, unless I got the handle wrong.
That's the right handle.
Yep. Feeding it in my head all day. But it's exciting for them. And I think what they're looking for now is just to make sure that support's there. Come out, support them online, help them engage, help them understand what the fans want this team to be. And then don't forget that you can watch all League One matches on ESPN Plus or YouTube. I mean, it's just an exciting time to see the games around the league.
Thanks again for jumping on with us. We're going to keep rolling here on League One Fun and get to some news and notes around the league. Guys, this week, FC Tucson's Ledbetter got called up to be a part of Phoenix Rising and saw him play 24 minutes versus Sacramento. I know we have talked about, players going up to the championship level, players going up to MLS level. So as we continue to see things like this, what did that mean for you guys? What do you think that means for the league?
Well, I think it means that we're likely to see more of this, especially with some of the teams that have the relationships like Tucson does with Phoenix or North Texas. I mean, some of their guys are going to go up, and I also think the other way, right? So as players come down, like not only with Forward Madison, like we talked about with Peter Wilt about that last week, but I think it means that some of these teams are not going to be able to necessarily get the chemistry that they need if they have players moving up and down a lot. That being said, you look at what some of the teams have done over the past weekend, and even these two teams are, their chemistry is good, and they have really good athletes and guys with good soccer IQ. So, I think it's more that this has to be seen as part of the development framework and the pyramid of U.S. soccer.
Yeah, I mean, I look at it as great advertisement too, right? If we do have players that go up and they perform well, then people start saying, oh, well, maybe there's not much of a gap between USL Championship and League One play, and maybe other teams even get influenced, right? When they get an injury bug, or when their starters aren't putting in goals or whatever they need to happen, they might go, you know what, let's give it a try. Let's see if we can call somebody up. Let's see if we can get a loan, for a team that might have a big depth in one position and someone's not getting playing time. So I have no problem with it. I think, though, and we talk about a little more, is the other side of it, to where the USL Championship teams, MLS teams, are sending guys down. And so Lansing Tucson game, which we'll talk about, Tucson and Phoenix Rising make an announcement. I think it was hours before the game, right?
Yeah.
It was literally hours before the game. And it was, oh, by the way, we're sending down a midfielder and a 6'5" striker. No, don't worry about it. It's just, for fun. And, I see a lot of USL Championship fans. They're not a fan of MLS teams sending people down, especially last minute, right? And I think that's the thing. You watch tape, your coaches are trying to prepare, have tactics, and then at the last minute you have guys coming down. So how do we feel about that? I personally think there should be some kind of a 48-hour notice, or some kind of a notice to where you have to get that lineup in. It's almost like football with injuries. Like, yes, they're close to game time, but still there should be a cutoff for you to say, oh, by the way, these players are going to be joining the team.
I mean, I'm just going to say, if any USL or MLS teams want to throw a 6'5" striker down to Greenville a couple hours before a match, like, we'll take it, because we need somebody that can put them in the back of the net. So
we'll get to that.
I'm all here for it. No, I think you're right. I mean, I think it's I don't have a problem with players being loaned down, because I think ultimately that's what this league I think can be good for. I was going to make the analogy a little bit when we're talking about players going up and down. This feels with a little more even footing and a little more sustainability than the alliance of American football was this year. But you kind of saw when that league came around, a lot of guys who maybe didn't get a crack at the NFL get a chance to play, be featured. And now you're seeing a lot of those guys who really were able to show out getting signed to NFL rosters. So I think that's kind of what you hope League One can be, that some guys that maybe have been overlooked, haven't gotten the playing time on another level, or just coming up and haven't had a chance to crack in, getting some game tape, getting their game out there, and potentially being able to move up. And like, honestly, that's the dream. You want to be able to follow a guy that maybe played in your hometown, who then goes on to the big stage and kind of has this Cinderella story, if you will. But I don't have a problem with players coming down either to get some playing time. But I do think there probably needs to be some limits, like you say, Jason, 48 hours, something where teams can prep for them at least, and not just completely be thrown for a loop.
We'll have to check. I think there actually are rules that you have to have like a 23-man roster a certain time frame before, but I don't remember if that was 48 hours or 24 hours. There is some kind of rule for that, and since I'm the rules expert, I better check it,
because we heard about it, pretty much while teams were warming up. So,
the 18 is different, yeah. So is that public, and who gets it? Maybe that's
right.
The next question for Steve.
Yeah.
And as far as the minor league football, just don't wish any kind of Christian Hackenberg on any players.
Right.
That guy is trash.
Well, before we go too far down that rabbit hole, let's look back last week, some results from some games, and maybe one of the sneakiest stories in League One right now is a team that we all pretty much dogged on preseason, and that was Toronto FC2. And now they are one of only two undefeated teams in the league, and both of the undefeated teams are both two teams, surprisingly. So Toronto FC2 gets a victory versus Lansing 2-0. Ira, what did you think about this matchup?
Well, so I'm going to say two things about that, and that is that both North Texas and TFC2 have played less games than every other team in the league. So remember that too. So they could lose their fourth game each. It's possible. So
North Texas will. You just wait.
I thought, Toronto has looked good. And I think the reason why we made fun of them was more that we didn't have a lot of information about the team early on. And they've obviously shown it on the field that they can do it. This game was a little bit closer, I think, than the score line suggests. You had Lansing hit the crossbar late in the second half. I do have a question for you guys. Do you guys think Patricio on that free kick where he scored in the 11th minute, was he shooting or was he crossing? I'm not that it matters because it went in the net, but I think that it was probably supposed to be.
I don't think the keeper knew, because if you look at the keeper's reaction, he had a very late reaction to it, and I think he got a fingertip on it. So had he have actually moved on time, he probably would have saved it. So yeah, that's a good question. He's always going to say he shot it, right? That's just,
of course he has to. But I'm pretty sure he was crossing, which is why the keeper maybe was a little bit out of position when he struck the ball.
I think we saw the crazy thing about this week is one, no red cards in any games this week. I think this is the first week so far in the league we haven't had red cards.
I think you're right. Yeah.
And number two, crazy either goals from free kicks or near goals from free kicks in nearly every game this week. It seems like set pieces are becoming a thing in League One. So yeah, I mean, I think I don't know if he was trying to do that or not. Jason, what did you think about this match?
So first and foremost, you guys are using the word "we" a lot. Chris, I'll give you daddy duty excuses, but somebody came on this show wearing a Toronto jersey to show them love and said that the two teams are going to be better than you guys are saying. So that's fine. We're just going to put that on.
Not all of us have jerseys for every team that's ever existed.
But I will say this game could have been a lot different. When you go back and look, Nathan Lewis, Lansing had a wide open header. And if he puts that in, and I think that was in like the first 15 minutes of the game, you put that in, it's a whole different game. Lansing, obviously this is their, now they played Tucson, they 2 games without a goal. They're struggling, and that could have been the difference, right? I think though that a lot of players that have impressed me for Toronto, one of the biggest difference makers, I think, was Okello. So that's somebody who I didn't get to really hear much about in preseason, but he's a huge, huge midfielder, right? He's more, I don't like comparing players, but he's like a Derek Jones to where he can be upfield or backfield, stopping counterattacks or just taking the ball from you like lunch money, but also assisting in passing. And I think he was a big difference because Lansing, who, bread and butter off of quick passing and getting downfield, he stopped a lot of that and kind of slowed down. And Lansing was only finding a lot of good chances when they countered and had one-on-one on the sides when he wasn't involved. But then the issue with that is while Toomey has a lot of great shots and, great free kick taker, he's not putting the ball in the net. And so you start questioning, is this whole going down the sides and sending in crosses the way to go about it, right? Because you look at Toomey playing and then, Steve St. Duke not playing on last night's game. They pretty much have identical minutes, and Steve St. Duke has 7 successful crosses, I believe, to Toomey's 2. He has more key passes. He has better chances created. So I think that maybe tactically wise, Lansing needs to start kind of playing to the middle, using their strikers to have their back to goal and start giving some give and goes and allowing Toomey to make those late runs down the side, because I don't see it happening with this one-on-one on the side and sending in crosses. Tactically, it's been 2 games now. They haven't scored. They're not really succeeding on those crosses, so they might need to.
One of the reasons why they're not, a lot of those crosses aren't successful is they don't have enough players in the box to receive them, right? So they wind up having one target person in the box with 2 center backs, and it just doesn't work, right? That you need to have an overload there, or at least 1v1. So you need to be able to press up another central midfielder. And I'm not 100% sure why Lansing wasn't trying to do that. It just seemed like no one was there for kind of a run along with the cross. The other thing that I want, Chris, did you see the penalty kick and listen to the broadcast on ESPN Plus?
I don't particularly remember the broadcast, but I did see the penalty kick.
Yeah, so the announcer didn't seem to know what the signal for a penalty is, because he thought that it was a signal for a corner when very clearly
Right.
the referee pointed right at the spot and said, "Oh, it's going out for a corner." And then the camera pans away to go to the corner, and we missed some of the interaction between some of the Lansing players and the referee. But
Well, just wait till we get the Greenville Madison game, and I will go off the top rope on the production from this production company that's doing these matches. But
one thing I want to say before we move on, though, Lansing had their chances,
Oh, yeah.
right? This wasn't a game to where, Toronto just dominated possession or stopped them and, cleared everything.
they hit the crossbar in like
They
the
hit
60-something
the
minutes.
crossbar. Gomez had a great chance in the 82nd minute, and it just went wide. Dunn had an amazing clearance off the line in the 59th, 60th minute, which could have been a goal in any other game. But, I think the issue with teams that, depend on scoring a lot of goals and being fast paced is, you start getting weary after 2 games. Or it's just like, okay, when are these goals actually coming? Because that's what we're depending on, right? And this is going to be an interesting weekend. And also, Lansing fans, what's up with the bathroom shower rug on the field up in the corner? I know y'all know what I'm talking about. It's just smooth field, and then it looks like a rug like that you use to make sure that your tiles don't get wet and you don't slip and die. That's what it looks like. Y'all got to do something better with that. I can't keep watching that.
Well, with that being said, so I talked a little bit about free kick goals and free kick opportunities, but a couple. This next game had really one goal, and then one like crazy goal at the end. South Georgia Tormenta beats FC Tucson 2-0. Really, it was a 1-0 game, and there was a crazy. The goalkeeper is all the way up on a set piece, and then just gets torched trying to run back to his goal. And it's
Connor Antley.
He was lumbering. He was lumbering back. I would say.
Yeah,
striker of all time.
I think at some point he was just like, you know what, just take it, just take the goal. So this match, Tormenta, I think, we talked a little bit last week. Should we be concerned about Tormenta? I don't think any of us felt really like we should be, but they kind of kicked that to the curb this week and get back on the winning streak. Jason, what do you think about this match?
Yeah, I'm going to say Phelps. Like I said last week, they missed him. He came back and showed why. Played a great game, made a nice tackle in the 48th minute that saved a through ball that was going to be an obvious goal. Tormenta's back line also, once they get their guys back, they're playing extremely high, a lot higher than they were playing the week before. And because of that, they have possession more. They kind of controlled the game more. Antley, they pretty much gave the keys, and he was overlapping and probably on the offensive side of the field more than he was on the defensive side, which I love that. And a player that I think also did a really great job was Dennis. I think he did a great job. Tucson also had their moments. There was a ball that was stolen in the 68th minute that almost led to a goal. My question, though, is we talked about, the second goal with the keeper going all the way up. There was still like a minute and 20 seconds left of extra time. So I'm going to ask you guys this, because obviously it's super early in the season, but when you only have 4 teams, or when you have 4 teams make the playoffs out of 10 spots, right? It could come down the goal differential for that 4th spot. And yeah, you think, okay, it's early, I'm going for the win, we'll make up for it later. But how do you guys feel about setting the keeper up that early?
I mean, when I saw that, I thought, what are you doing? Like, what are you doing all the way up there? There's plenty of time left. Like, this is not like clock's ticking away. You've already expired your stoppage minutes, and this is like literally going to be the last shot of the game. I don't know. I was so confused by that.
Yeah, Ira, what do you think? Would you? I mean, you're a coach.
Yeah, it was a little bit early. I think 2 things. I think one, Tucson's not in the U.S. Open Cup, so maybe they were thinking that this was like an Open Cup match and they needed to get the draw to go to extra time. I don't know. But the other thing is too, I think in the end, the point that you get is probably more important than the one goal you might concede, right? So that extra point gets you closer to the line than, worrying about the goal differential at the end. So so I think you have to press for that goal in that situation, because losing by 2 or losing by 1 and at the end of the day is less important. The other thing that I'd note, and Jason, you brought this up about how high Tormenta's back line was, that also forced Tormenta's front line to move up. So when you look at the average positioning of Morel, Dennis, and Coutinho, that was even with Tucson center backs. So their average position was actually way high up. Like 3 of them were basically on the shoulder of the 2 center backs for most of the game. And that was something that after the match, I went out and looked at the Opta data on USL's League One website and looked at that, because I was really curious, because those guys were always like right up there in the center, and that they were creating those problems. And Tucson didn't look that bad, really. It just, they got unlucky. So 82nd minute, goal line stand, 2 clearances off the line, a great save and a good clearance. I mean,
of the week,
Tucson this easily could have been a 1-1 match, easily. Yeah. So I wouldn't say that, it probably 2-0 was probably unfair. Like 1-0 probably would have been a more fair score, but that's the way Antley runs.
And I think that it really benefited Tormenta to be that high. Dennis, I think, showed a lot of great skill on the ball and drew in a lot of attention. And even in that Coutinho goal, he is the one that draws in the attention for then the pass it to Coutinho, who's making the run down the side. And he's a big body who gets up and down the field quickly, right? Very physical. So that's something that they probably love having up there. Whereas Morel kind of just causes havoc with his speed and being all over the place and his athleticism. You get a physical guy up there too to draw in attention. I think Tormenta can really benefit from that.
So since Ira's MVP nominee, Moshe Perez, is not in the league anymore.
And they could have used him in this game too, by the way. Just saying.
Should we let Ira pick up an early season bid on Connor Antley for MVP? I think he's going to be a sneaky dark horse candidate.
All right, I get a 0.9 for that. While you guys get 1 for your MVP picks, that's fine. I'll take that.
So we go from a game with a goal that maybe shouldn't have happened there at the end to another game with a goal that probably shouldn't have happened. North Texas SC with the victory 1-0 over Orlando City on an own goal off of a corner kick that honestly, I don't know what happened there. I've watched that goal 2 or 3 times, and it's baffling that I don't know what was going on. But regardless of that, we've talked about Orlando City B kind of being, again, I think this is the team we for sure all gave the wooden spoon. We all said this team is not going to be any good, and they're still at the bottom of the standings. Yet every week they look like they could win every week.
I've got a hot take for you. Orlando should have won that game.
Yeah, I think so.
I truly think Orlando had the chance to win that game. And the one thing that they are struggling with week by week are set pieces. They are always getting scored on with set pieces, or because they want to bring someone down and give them a PK or a free kick. That's the one thing they need to focus on. If they can get a consistent striker up top and have discipline with set pieces, they could be a potential upset alert or sneak a dark horse into a 4th position. I think Orlando really could have won that game because North Texas was not finishing their chances either, right? We look at Rodriguez, who played a great game. He was creating chances. He won 10 duels, came back and helped with tackles, but nobody for North Texas was finishing their chances. And I think Orlando had the better chances to finish than North Texas did.
So I think there's a couple of things here. I think one, Orlando's attack, I think, is reasonably dangerous, but they just weren't great at finishing. And Luke Granitor had a bad game. Like if he played with the amount of energy and movement that he did in some of the other games, I think he would have probably put 2 in. And Orlando's back line, like, even though, Jason, you say that they had a good game, maybe deserved to win. Actually, I disagree. I think North Texas should have had a couple more goals just with how sloppy the back line of Orlando is. And I think that's been their problem the whole season so far. And what happened on the goal? So Chris, you could look at this. It infuriates me when you get good service into the box like that and it hits the ground, right? So, I mean, a defender or an attacker needs to get your ahead on that, because that was actually a pretty good service. It went through everyone, which didn't make much sense. But yeah, Orlando can definitely be dangerous, but they need to be more clinical. Like they had almost as many shots as North Texas. They just couldn't finish any of them.
And go ahead, Chris.
I just know they're going to figure it out when they play Greenville the first time. I just have this feeling that that's what's going to happen.
That's not this week, is it? Because one of my predictions was
No.
that we'd have one team that had 5 that would go undefeated in the first 5, and one team that wouldn't have a win in the first 5. So
Yeah, they're not
obviously
playing us.
OCB's my
So shout out to Sebastian Joffrey though. He really impressed me against North Texas. I thought he had a great game, and just want to give the kid some shout out. I still think Orlando, even though North Texas probably had more chances and more, which would look like clear chances, whether it be 1v1, I think Orlando had the pace and the ability to finish, and they just didn't, right? Like you said, Grantor had a bad game. And I think if Orlando finished, they had 2 great chances in the first half. They finish any of those, that's a complete different game. And I think that's the first time that North Texas is playing down in the whole season.
Can we play a little bit of a before we move on to the next match? Can we play a little bit of counterfactual here? What if Ricardo Pepe's in this game?
Yeah, well, you know,
I'm glad he is not coming to the upstate this weekend. I can just tell you that.
One thing that North Texas has to look to this upcoming week, though, it's their first road game. So I wonder how they're going to handle that, right? They've been home. They've been feeling good. They've been playing on the same field they practice at. So now let's see what happens when they have to hit the road.
Hostile environment, and I'm going to let them have it because my seats are front row midfield, and I'm going to be yelling at every single one of them.
You're yelling at children, Chris.
Right. I have no shame. Actually, I wind up yelling at the opposing coaches more than I do at any of the players. Moving on to the next game, Richmond Kickers with the 1-0 victory over the Chattanooga Red Wolves. Richmond, we talked about early in the season, started kind of slow. They've racked up 2 wins back-to-back weeks. Joe Gallardo with goals in both matches, kind of sneakily creeping up on maybe getting in that golden boot race there, Joe Gallardo. What did you think? What did you think about this one, Ira? I know you're not like necessarily a Richmond guy, but you're kind of our Richmond affiliate or closest one we have.
Fair enough. Fair enough. I thought Richmond's defense did a really good job this game. They shut down Stephen Beattie, and so Beattie wound up trying to find space on the outside. So you look at where he got the ball and where his touches were; they were on the wings, and that's not where he's dangerous, right? He's much more dangerous when he's creating in the midfield, a lot more, and trying to get the ball, get the ball up top of the middle. I have to say that, even though Gallardo got the goal, and certainly will get the credit for a decent finish, he didn't do any of the work. That was Mwape, and he did a great job. And Buldick's ball, it was spot on his foot looking for the run. So I think some of the stuff that Coach Bulow's been working on with them in possession and moving the ball forward and looking for diagonal runs and seams seem to be working. So the chemistry seems to be there on the side of Richmond. And I think on the Chattanooga side, they didn't play a terrible game in the defensive half, really. It was on the offensive half. They couldn't get anything going. And I think that was on, Beattie kind of not being able to find the ball. And that was probably partially due to, Richmond doing some homework on them. And at the same time, just on the fly, Beattie and the rest of the guys not being able to figure out how to get the ball kind of in that zone 14 right on top of the D and in front of net.
Yeah, Bolduc is the motor of that team. In the last 2 weeks, he's been the one to really set up that offense, was probably responsible for both goals in those 2 weeks. But we want to talk about the breaks. Aqua has been incredible, right? And I mentioned it last year. He's sneaky, one of my chances to be defender of the year. It's like, no, he keeps moving up further, and it helps Richmond retain possession so much more. And there were so many times to where Chattanooga would get the ball and Aqua would go, nah, I'm going to take that right back. And then they would just resettle. I thought Connor Shinovsky was great, was just looking, just a stone back there, wasn't really caring about anything that was happening, just had it head and had a foot on everything. And I think that Richmond's defense is what causes them to have that possession and be able to build from their offense. And then when you've got guys like Lockerbie, who, I don't know if it's him or Mbappe, who I don't know who's exactly the fastest on the team. I know there was a little Twitter debate going on with that, but both of those guys can fly. And we saw Lockerbie fly last week. We saw a little bit of it this week. I think that the key to Richmond right now is retaining that possession in the midfield or on their back line when they're clearing. And Aqua is a huge part of that. And he's a player that's really impressed me this year.
Yeah, and like I said, to start off this recap in this game, I think Richmond is kind of starting to hit their rhythm. But I tell you, the thing I want to focus on a little more is the Red Wolves, and I think the Red Wolves have got to be the most inconsistent team in the league right now. One week they could beat anybody, and one week they could literally lose to anybody. And they've looked great and they've looked terrible. And it's really like, and it feels like it's every other week they're going to have a game that's good and a game that's terrible. And so I don't know. I think they're the most they are the Real Salt Lake of USL League One. Like you just don't know what you're going to get from week to week, and I don't know what to think about where they're going to end up in the standings. Because like I said, I think they could make the playoffs, and I think they could come in dead last.
I think it's their midfield. I think that's basically what it comes down to, right? They're losing. And I did an article last week about it. I think they've lost more duels than anyone in the league, especially in their midfield. And because of that, you're allowing other teams to build up. You're allowing them to have possession. And when you're facing teams like Lansing and Greenville and Richmond, you're not going to get that ball back for a while. And by the time you do, it might be in the middle of the field because someone just scored a goal. And when they're a defensive team, they're good defensively, right? Like they hung on there for, it's not like Richmond blew them out by 3 goals, but it's important for you to do something with that defense. And I think right now they're just losing the battle in the midfield.
Yeah, they need a better number 6 or someone designated in that role and kind of that midfield destroyer to win the ball, in more dangerous places. The other thing about this game that I want to just note is that Abubakar Keita got his first minutes. So I think those were his first professional minutes. Am I getting that right? He did not have a debut with Columbus yet, right? So
no,
yeah, so those were his first professional minutes. Played 24 minutes. I thought looked okay. Not spectacular. Took him a few minutes to try and get into the game and get into the rhythm. So Richmond might see a little bit more of him when he, assuming he's not called up to the U20 squad for the World Cup.
So we had a home opener this week in USL League One up in Madison.
What happened there?
Well, here we go. Okay, strap your seatbelt on because I'm about to come off the top rope on everybody about this match. First off, Mr. Peter Wilt, who we love and we adore on the show, and we're so grateful that he gave us his time last week. But he did not like me saying anything about how it was going to feel a little bit like a circus. And yet I saw people riding flamingos. I saw the team signing a cow this week. I'm just saying, you can't come in here and say that the PT Barnum thing's crazy because it's not. This game was delayed 30 minutes because of snow and they couldn't clear the field off well enough. Break out the orange, yellow ball, evidently. Wasn't aware that it was going to be yellow. Break out the snowball for the Madison Greenville match. This was really the tale of two halves. In my opinion, Greenville looking really strong in the first half. And then for the second week in a row, they come out of halftime and they just shut it down. And really in the second half, Madison looked the stronger team. The possession pendulum swung over to their direction. And it just felt like a tale of two halves. But my issue with this game had nothing to do with things that happened on the field. As a fan of a team watching a broadcast, I expect when you're on ESPN Plus, when you've signed this distribution deal with whoever's producing these matches out of Florida, I have felt like for every match I've watched this year in the league, it has felt fairly high quality. I know not all of them are as good as others, and part of that has to do with where the camera is, what the conditions are, how the crowd is. I feel like all the commentary has been, the play-by-play and color guys have been fairly level. I think you've got guys who are the Greenville play-by-play guy. You have the Tormenta play-by-play. Like you have guys who are just doing play-by-play for those matches, but it doesn't feel like there's any homerism necessarily. I felt like in this match, I felt like the commentary was very, very driven towards Madison, and that's okay. Like I don't have as big of an issue with that, but the camera work in this match drove me bananas. You'd get a free kick, set up for a free kick, and all of a sudden they just zoom in on the ball and zoom in on a player. The kick would be happening, the play would be going, and you'd just be watching this random person instead of watching the game. They had these weird zoom ins and zoom outs and cuts here and cuts there. The play-by-play man audibly yawned on the broadcast in the second half. They put up the wrong stats from who knows what game at halftime. The whole thing was a complete disaster, and I'm so fired up about it. Tell me I'm wrong.
I can't say that you're completely wrong at all. I think part of it's that whoever was directing the show was probably used to doing other sports that don't move all the time, right? So, you need a director who is going to be moving cameras around. And, I'm going back to, 30 years ago to my broadcast journalism major. And when you have two cameras and you have a sport that's moving all the time, it's not the same as doing, football or baseball where you have, set many seconds between action, right? And I feel like that's what it was. It was someone trying to learn how to do soccer on the fly, not having practiced on like a high school game or something like that first. So yeah, I agree. I think that quality could have been a lot better. I mean, in general, I think most of the production has been pretty good, but yeah, that game wasn't particularly wasn't great.
Sounds like you peasants don't understand art. That's all it is. It's interpretation. Okay, it's different, right? This is what you want, right? You want something different. You want something new.
You just need two cameras, one on one half, one on the other, and switch between the two wherever the ball is. That's
what you should be living about, though, Christopher. We are now 2 games of Greenville crossing the ball a grand total of 50 times and only connecting on 4 of them. Mm-hmm. If Jesus was here, he would not be a Greenville fan because all you guys do is cross to no success.
And Bermudez in this match had 4 attempts and only 1 successful cross the whole game. And I feel like if Bermudez is on, you guys like rock, and then when he's not, you guys have some problem getting into the flow of the game.
That is his 1 of 8 in the past 2 games, Ira.
It's almost as if I haven't been saying for weeks and weeks that Greenville's biggest problem is they don't have anybody who can finish these chances. Well, I take that back. They have one man that can finish the chance, and his name is Jake Keegan, but he can't do it all. And he's not as a finisher, he's probably a B to B plus finisher. He's not an A finisher. So this team just they don't have a finisher. They did sign another player finally this week, but he's a midfielder. I think but they still have like the smallest roster in the league. They're sitting at 20 people. They have got to find a striker. So if any championship teams want to loan their 6'5" striker to Greenville, come on, we'll have him. We'll take him.
But at what point do you start saying, until we get that, we might need to change tactics? Because, and I'm going to bring this up, for the one trend I've noticed in this league, the center backs are pretty good at aerial duels. I don't recall anyone actually winning a cross over somebody else, right? A 50-50 ball in the air. And so when they're playing Tormenta, when they're playing Madison, Connor Tobin and Sean Russell, they're not going to be losing too many balls in the air, especially when they have time and they're already set. So it might be a tactic thing from the league as a whole. Maybe you guys need to just stop sending in crosses for the time being, because a lot of these teams built their teams based off of veteran defenders, especially center backs, and they're ready for it. And these are still new teams, still learning their offensive tactics. So maybe you should try something different.
Yeah, the only thing I would say to push against that a little bit is that even in the midst of not being able to score, Greenville's defense has still been one of, if not the strongest one in the league. The games they've lost, they've only let 1 goal in. They have really shut down the back. They've let at least half the goals have been scored against them have been quick counter strikes. I don't know. I mean, I think they're doing good defensively, but if you're not going to be able to score, you better be shutting people out pretty consistently. So we want to just keep pushing ahead so that we don't run out of time. We don't want this to be too long. Last night we had a game. I don't know if this is technically last week or this week's game.
I think they counted it for the current week 6.
Okay. So FC Tucson, 2-0 back-to-back matches not back-to-back matches, but they're playing Lansing Ignite. They beat them 2-0. What did you guys think of this match?
Yeah, it's pretty much the same thing that Lansing had last week, right? They're getting these chances, they're there and they're not finishing them, and they're allowing teams to stay in the game, and all it takes is one counterattack for a team to go up. And then that's what we saw with Tucson, right? We saw a run down the side And then the one thing I do want to point out, though, I don't remember who was shooting the ball for Tucson, but whoever was shooting it after that counterattack down the side, Lansing had 5 players in the box during that shot, and every single last one of them were ball watching and watching that shot instead of marking their men. And that's when Jangba flew down the side. Nobody was marking him. And so when the ball took a weird deflection off of Carr, I believe, because the ball had backspin, nobody was watching him. And so he had not only time, but he had the momentum and the space to go up and shoot. It's one to get the ball at your feet, have a defender right there, and you have to have a quick shot, get no kind of power, speed behind it. But it's another one to actually have the time, momentum, and space to run up and shoot that ball. And Jangba had a great shot, right? That was just a rocket.
It was a nice shot, but it was a 4v4 in the box, and that should not happen. That means that you've broken down defensively. So at that moment, Lansing did not have numbers up in the box. They didn't have good defensive cover. And like you said, no one closed down the ball. No one closed down the ball 3 different times during that same play. And, so the ball went to the right side. It was on the right side of the goal. There was nothing on. No one pressured the ball, cut back to the penalty spot. And then, and then still no pressure on the ball. Everyone just standing there trying to make a wall, I guess, in front of the goal. And then the ball goes outside to Jangba, who's making a great run and a great finish. The other thing I'd say too is that Lansing, we're used to pressing, right? We're used to them pressing, and staying really high. Teams that press don't like the ball. I think Tucson figured that out, and Tucson said, fine, we'll give Lansing the ball. They don't like having the ball. So Lansing had the ball 65% of the time or something like that, right? 65, 66% of the time. And so I think that was an issue for Lansing's attack because they wanted to win the ball high and they never could because they always had to build out of the back.
Well, also too, my problem with that is he came off the bench. Steve St. Duke's your most creative player. You can't, I know you have 3 games in 8 days. He can't come off the bench. I just don't see it. Like you said, especially when Lansing was going to control possession, and I think they had like 65% of possession, right? They needed creativity because they're not getting it off a press. Nick Moon's not stealing the ball in the final third of his opponent. And bringing in Steve St. Duke when it's too late, that's the risk you have of having that super sub, right? You bring him in, a team's already scored, you're chasing now.
And maybe you need to bring him in earlier, right? Like, look, if you have to make a 30th minute or 35th minute sub, do it. Like, if you're, things not working, waste one of your subs early in order to get the right personnel on the field too. That's something I think coaches don't do enough of. Some of them will make changes at halftime, but most of them, stick with their game plan. I think sometimes a little bit too long.
And the last thing I'll say is stop giving Tucson free kicks. Don't do it because Tucson has won 2 games now because they've had free kicks pretty much. Stop doing it. Vega's kick, absolutely amazing. But what is Lansing doing with that line too, though? I don't understand the wall. It was, we're going to block the keeper. And then the keeper went, oh, no, move a little more to me so I can't see the shot at all. Okay, now you two spread 3 feet apart so he knows exactly which lane to kick it into. And then I'll have a late reaction to it because I can't see. So A, stop fouling Tucson near the box. And B, you got to work on that wall because I don't know what that was.
So let's look ahead a little bit to this week coming up before we wrap up for the evening. So we've got 4 league matches this weekend. Orlando City B hosting the Red Wolves of Chattanooga. Greenville hosting North Texas without Ricardo Pepi. Praise the Lord. Richmond hosting Lansing, and Madison hosting Toronto FC2. Any matches in there that stand out to you guys this weekend?
Lansing is on the road, and they're going to have to, they haven't scored in 2 games. They're going to have to turn around and play a game on Tuesday next week, I believe, or Wednesday for Open Cup. This is a dangerous game for them because if you go 3 games without scoring a goal and Richmond's defense has started looking good, and this is what your team has been hyped up to be, this is what you were supposed to be. You're supposed to have the most goals in the league. You're supposed to be, high pressure winning these balls. I think that's when fans are going to go, okay, I'm going to start rubbing on the worry button a little bit. I'm not going to slam on it yet, but I'm going to rub on it.
I think Richmond really wants to win this game, so Lansing has to look out because, Lansing had the better of both of the last 2 games. They've already dropped 6 goals on Richmond, and I think Richmond wants to make up for that and get that head-to-head goal differential down a little bit. So I think they'll be up for it. I'm interested in really seeing how the how the Madison Toronto game goes, because Madison, we saw the 0-0. This will be their second game. It won't be in a snowstorm. It doesn't look like. I actually did check the weather, and not that it matters because maybe TFC's 2 is used to it anyway. So I really think that could be that could be a fun match. So some teams that are in really good form, so that'll be good.
I am most excited this weekend, I think, for Orlando City B hosting the Red Wolves, because I think Ira's prophecy about a team going winless is going to get snapped this weekend when they get the victory against the Red Wolves down in Orlando. Just going to call my shot now on that one. And then, as you alluded to, Jason, next week we have U.S. Open Cup action. Richmond hosting Virginia United, Lansing hosting AFC Ann Arbor, Tormenta FC 2 hosting Chattanooga Red Wolves, Bavarian SC hosting Madison, and then the big boy, the game of all games, Greenville Triumph hosting South Georgia Tormenta, the biggest rivalry in League One according to the league.
And I'm gonna put my my Nostradamus hat on and give you guys a prediction. I think that's the game that goes into PKs. I think you're looking at a 0-0 or 1-1 game, and it's going to go to PKs, and the league is going to just be salivating and just loving that this is actually the rivalry in the making that they've been wanting to have. I truly think that game's going to go into PKs. And then I don't know, I'm looking at, when we're looking at who can score, when your center back is up there almost in the golden boot race, I don't know, Tormenta looks like I might have to put my money on them in PKs.
Chris, I have a question for you. Since you mentioned before that you only have 20 players on the Greenville roster, there obviously needs to be some rotation probably between these two games, right? So do you think that the team is going to prioritize the U.S. Open Cup? I would guess, and that means to rotate the roster a bit over the weekend against North Texas.
I mean, there ain't much rotating to be done, man. I don't know what to tell you. They're just
rotate 6 or something, right?
Yeah, I mean, there really isn't. And if I'm honest, here's the thing. I think because Greenville knows that if they win that match, they will get to host the Charleston Battery. I do think there is a huge incentive for them to go all guns blazing, trying to beat Tormenta at home. Also, I think the guys are going to be motivated just from the standpoint that they lost that home opening match. That was a big spotlight match. This is a big spotlight match, the first USL League One versus League One US Open Cup match. So maybe thinking they can get a little bit of that piece back to themselves. So I think that's probably more of a priority than beating North Texas. But if I'm honest, man, I don't think they're going to rotate. I think you're going to see a first choice lineup on Saturday. I think you're going to see a first choice lineup on Wednesday, because honestly, they don't have a ton of other options. Now, the thing about Greenville is there's not a huge drop off, and you've seen some guys rotate in and out and different guys in the starting 11 that I don't know that there is here's the 11 guys that are the first choice guys. I think there's probably maybe 15 guys that are what I would consider to be Coach Harkes' first team selections. So I think you're going to see some rotation in that, but I would still say it's going to be what I would consider to be a first choice lineup for both matches.
One thing you might want to try is putting Cole Seiler up there as striker, because that boy's footwork is incredible. I was impressed by his footwork back there and his dribbling. So
they moved him. They moved him up to midfield this week against Madison, and I was kind of hesitant about it just because he's such a good center back, but he looked really good in the midfield. And that's the thing I will say about Greenville that I think Coach Harkes has done the last couple of weeks is he's kind of mixed people up in terms of where they are positionally, trying Tyler Pollock up in the midfield against Richmond, trying Cole Seiler up in the midfield versus Madison. I wouldn't be surprised to see some of that, because I think ultimately there is probably more depth at the defender spot than everywhere else, and just trying to get the best guys on the field and finding a place for them. So yeah, I'd be interested to see the lineups he rolls out with, but I do think that Greenville's going to be highly motivated to win that match next Wednesday. Any other thoughts on the league before we wrap up and thank our sponsors?
Let me give you two scenarios. You tell me which one is worse. Lansing doesn't score this week. Third week in a row they don't score, and then they go and lose their U.S. Open Cup game. against a formidable opponent, or Chattanooga Red Wolves lose again this weekend and then lose to Tormenta 2 in their U.S. Open Cup game.
Ooh.
What is the worst scenario in that? Because at least with Lansing, they get a home game next weekend against you guys, in which with that rotation, that's probably their prime opportunity to go, look, we just need one in, and then it'll be an open gate flood and they'll start going in. But I think with the Red Wolves having this much pride and being in that city, I don't think you can lose to Tormenta 2.
Yeah, I mean, I think it would be hard to, one, get bounced by a lower division team when you're the Red Wolves and you're already facing plenty of opposition from all the lower division teams in the country. And also not just to lose to a lower division team, but to lose to basically a 2-team from a team in your league. That's going to be hard. But if I'm honest, I actually think the Lansing scenario might be worse just because of the expectation level on Lansing as a team coming into the season. And even as we sit here today, like, they haven't been playing great the last couple of weeks, but I think people still would say this is one of the best offensive attacks in the league. This is a team that's going to score a bunch of goals. This is a team that's going to be in contention and probably in the playoffs. So if you continue on that slide downward and you get bounced in the first round of the U.S. Open Cup, people are really going to have to step back and go, whoa, okay, something's seriously going on here.
The one advantage that some of these teams like the Red Wolves will have is that these USL League 2 teams and the NPSL teams, they haven't played a competitive match yet. So these will be their first competitive matches. In fact, I was just this weekend with some guys who were here at a local USL League 2 team, and they were saying, yeah, like, we're practicing now, but our first competitive match is going to be our US Open Cup match next week. So it's, and then their league starts the following week. So it's a really weird situation for them.
But just when you
so it just makes it more embarrassing, by the way, if you lose to them.
Well, but just as you say that, though, just wanna say that the local NPSL team in Greenville FC, today goes on the road and scrimmages 5th place USL Championship team Charleston Battery and comes back home with a 2-1 victory. So it could happen any given day. You never know.
Hashtag preseason matters.
Preseason matters.
Hang the dang
they're
banner.
my automatic favorite for winning the league this year.
Hang the banner, baby.
Anybody want to make any bold upset predictions, or do we think it's kind of going to play out how it looks on paper outside of the Tormenta Greenville game, which is obviously anyone's?
Yeah, I think it's going to be chalk, the other 4 matches.
Ira, you too?
Yeah, I mean, not knowing any of the other teams, it's almost impossible to tell.
The one team, if I was going to pick a game that might be an upset, it would be that Bavarian Madison game.
I was going to say, don't sleep on Bavarian.
But I still just think, and Madison hasn't looked great all season, but I think that the talent discrepancy is going to be there, and I think it's going to be close. I actually think that one could be one that you could potentially see going to PKs as well. But I think ultimately Madison would pull out the victory there. But that would be the one. If I had to pick one, that would be the one that I would say would be most likely to see an upset. Guys, thanks for being on the show again this week. We want to thank our sponsors, Golden Goal Press, the best choice to get custom shirts, hats, mugs, and other items for just yourself or your organization. Check out their amazing products at a fraction of the price of other places at goldengoalpress.com. And also thanks to Roughneck Scarves, the official scarf supplier of MLS, USL, US Soccer, and so much more. Get your custom scarves for your group or team at roughneckscarves.com. Ira, where can folks stay connected with you this week as you're watching all the League One matches and all the Open Cup matches?
At Ira Jersey. And usually during the matches, I'm not tweeting, by the way, because I'm concentrating on the match.
Someone that is live tweeting and live gifting is our guy, Jason. Where can they follow you?
At Home Sweet Soccer. I'll be showing Toronto love, which I'll swear I don't.
You can follow me. Best place to follow me is over at YTSS Podcast. That's where you get all my soccer coverage. Or if you want to follow me for my spicy yelling at the USL broadcasts, you can see me over at Youth Guy Cash. And don't forget to follow us at League One Fun League, the #1 fun over on Twitter. And we thank you for joining us again this week. And we will be back with you next week. I will probably not be on the show next week because I got a game to be at watching my Triumph boys take down Tormenta in US Open Cup and send them back to Georgia with tears in their eyes.
Ira, you're not going to be on the show either, right?
No, next week I'll be here. Yeah.
Oh man, I was going to say tune in next week when I get an hour to just rant about everything that's wrong.
If you really want it, I'll take a night off and watch the Open Cup matches.
It'll be way too much like a therapy session. You don't want to see that. I'll see you, Ira.
We will find somebody to fill this giant seat of mine, I'm sure, just for a 1 week basis. So, hey guys, thanks for joining us, and we will catch you guys again next week.